this is not something that affects a person or a company. It affects an entire section of the community. It is a sector that has been growing consistently. In the last 10 years, we have doubled the export turnover. So it shows that how fast it is growing. So that makes a total of around 58.25%. Our
From nothing,
competitors,
from zero to that much more.
right now, it's a problem of cash flow, even as you're looking for new markets.
From In Focus, this is Tariff Watch. We bring you this special series on the new US tariffs, their impact on Indian industries, and the people whose lives are being reshaped by them. So please, continue listening.
This is In Focus, and I am Anupama Chandrasekaran. A few weeks ago, containers filled with frozen shrimp left Indian ports, bound for dinner tables in the United States. By the time those ships were halfway across the ocean, the rules had changed. Tariffs had jumped so sharply that American buyers began cancelling their orders. Those containers worth crores of rupees are now stranded at sea. This is not just a story about trade wars and tariffs. It's about fishermen in Andhra Pradesh deciding if they can afford to take their boats out, about women in Mumbai's Sassoon dock who peel prawns by hand, wondering if they will have work tomorrow, and about an industry that supports millions suddenly staring at a collapse. Today on In Focus, we speak to Dr. K.N. Raghavan, Secretary General of the Seafood Exporters Association of India, about how a decision in Washington is reshaping Indian fishing villages, markets, and homes, and what it means for the future of India's seafood industry. Dr. Raghavan, welcome to In Focus.
Thank you. Good morning. How are you?
Good. I'm fine. Dr. Raghavan, you of course wear many hats. You are, of course, a medical doctor. You are, the head of this sectors, this industry group in the sector. And of course, you've also kind of worn a hat of being an umpire in cricket matches. You've kind of done a lot of things. But has anything been as interesting or as tough as the times you are seeing today?
Yeah, this is completely unexpected and caused a lot of turbulence. So this has been quite challenging,
Right.
I would say. And as you put it in the intro, this is not something that affects a person or a company. It affects an entire section of the community, of
Right.
the population. We have roughly 28 million people who are employed in the fisheries sector as fishermen, as fishers, hatchery owners, ladies who work in the peeling sheds. Then we have people who sell the fish. Then we have people in the processing plants, exporters. So it's a huge supply chain that works here. So their livelihoods are being affected by the decisions taken in Washington. So this point is of utmost importance because the crisis that the industry is facing today is not on account of any wrong business decision, any bad policies, or due to anything related to quality or sustainability related challenges. It's entirely due to a geopolitical issue between India and US, where one country is using tariff as a weapon, to quote unquote.
Yeah.
So this is why this issue has cropped up, and this has a potential for affecting the lives of millions of people in the country.
Right. And could we go
Now,
into some details about this? We're definitely going to talk a little more about trade policy, but can you help us see this crisis through the eyes of a shrimp farmer, for instance, in Andhra Pradesh, or a prawn peeler in Sassoon dock? What does this mean for their daily lives?
Now, I'll explain the system first. Now, Indian seafood sector, the export last year was around 7.4 billion US dollars. It is a sector that has been growing consistently. In the last 10 years, we have doubled the export turnover. So it shows that how fast it is growing. So then it employs people. You have the exporter. Then we have two sources in which the export products are coming in. One is through the marine fishing, where you go to sea using trawlers or boat cast nets and catch the fish. And second is the inland fisheries. Maybe some amount on the lakes and estuaries, but mostly from farming. So 75% of the total fish production in the country is from the inland sources. So the shrimp, which is the most important product that gets exported to US. So last year, out of the 7.4 billion US dollar worth of export that went from India, about 2.8 billion dollars worth went to United States. So it is around roughly 40%. So it is our largest market.
And I guess
Until first-
and shrimp is I think I read somewhere is about 85% of the exports to the United States is shrimp. Is that right?
Yes, 90% of the exports to United States are shrimp or products of shrimp, in the sense that value-added products of shrimp. So we have around 35% of the US market. So this commodity is the number one selling commodity in the US market as far as shrimp is concerned. So that has got its detractors also. There have been associations within US who want more duties to be imposed for anti-dumping duties.
Right.
Then we have the countervailing duties that have been imposed. So there have been issues taken up by some agencies within US targeting Indian shrimp, which is part of the business of
trade, right? International trade.
trade. Let's put of international trade.
Yeah.
Till last year, there was no tariff. That is till 1st of April. On 2nd, US announced a reciprocal tariff of 26% on India. But on 9th, it was kept in abeyance, a pause, quote unquote, and it was kept at 10% for all countries. Then on 31st July, it was announced that Indian exports, most of them will have a tariff of 25%.
Right.
And on 6th August came the announcement of the penal tariff of 25%.
An additional
no
penal tariff, right? Yeah.
Yes, so we have gone to 50% tariff. Plus, we have around 5.77% of countervailing duty and about 2.49% of anti-dumping duty, which is already there.
Wow.
So that makes a total of around 58.25%. Our
From nothing,
competitors
from zero to that much more.
Of course, countervailing and anti-vailing were countervailing and anti-dumping duties were there in smaller
Okay.
this thing, but this is a huge jump. Our competitor, the main competitor is Ecuador, who have a duty of 15%. Indonesia has 19%, Vietnam has 20%, and China has 30%. So that is where we have a distinct tariff disadvantage. Now, how does it affect the exporters? What happened from 1st of August is that most of the buyers have put their orders on hold because of uncertainty.
Correct.
Now, there's a long-standing relationship between buyers and sellers. So they trust a product, they place orders in advance for the entire year. Based on that, orders are placed to farms. Farms place orders to hatcheries, and hatcheries place orders so that the brood stock comes in. So what is exported is Pacific white shrimp.
Okay.
So this is not an indigenous Indian product. So you import the brood stock from abroad. There's a aquatic quarantine center in Chennai. After the quarantine, it is sold to the hatcheries. Hatcheries pick it up, breed it, and then these are given to the farms where it goes into a full-fledged shrimp or a prawn, and then it is taken for the pre-processing and processing. Pre-processing involves removing the head of the shrimp, the vein, and the shell. So deheaded, deveined, and deshelled. And then it goes for the processing, where it is cooked to a particular temperature and then frozen.
So you're
And
saying
then
there
it
are
is-
so many steps involved, so many businesses involved as well, right?
Yes. That is why you're mentioning about the prawn peelers. Prawn peelers are
Yeah.
people who do the process of taking off the head, removing the vein, and removing the shell. Now,
Right.
this is a particular form of skill which doesn't come easy. So this, and particularly it's a women-centric profession. You find that a lot of ladies are employed in this thing. So if you take the entire fisheries sector, you find that almost 45% of those employed are women. So this is a sector where the presence of women is substantial and they get hit the most. So when the orders stop, what do? It means that down the line, there is a shortage of work that is happening. At the processing end, the factories cannot export because the orders have been put on hold. So the stocks pile up. So then there's no work for the people working in the processing centers, pre-processing centers. They don't place orders at the farms and they don't place orders at the hatcheries. So the entire business cycle comes to a halt. This is the first challenge that happens. Second, now how do you sustain it? Now, you cannot let go of the people who have been working with you because of one argument or a difference of opinion between governments of two countries. You'll have to keep your business running.
Correct, because it
Otherwise,
might be resolved as well. Then you can't fire and then hire people back, right?
Yes, you cannot find, and obviously, as a responsible employer, you just cannot let people go like that. That's also an issue. So a humane approach is required, and at the same time, you have to plan for the future also.
Right.
So this is where we stand now. So on the first question of containers getting turned back, well, so far we don't have an instance of containers getting turned back. Approximately 2,000 containers were in water. So they will reach at various times till October 5th. So some of them will have 10%, some of them will have 25%, some of them will have 50%. So how that pans out between the buyer and seller is something to be decided between them. When the duty was first brought in of 10%, we had decided, as Indian seafood exporters had decided that the impact will be passed on. And the buyers in US had by and large accepted that. Said, okay, because generally it's an indirect tax. Indirect tax is always passed on to consumers.
So just to understand it, in April, when they imposed the 10% tax, that was passed on to the buyers, and the buyers were okay with it, taking
Yes,
on
they
that
accepted
increase in cost.
Yes.
But the
Yes.
subsequent costs,
And they passed it on. See, buyers
passed
don't
it on.
absorb it. Buyers pass on that. So products in the Walmart or other places went up. Now, Indian seafood export goes to three segments in US broadly. One is a restaurant chains. Second is a supermarkets. And third is a street food. Now, street food is at the lowest level, the segment that is highly sensitive to price changes. So even with 10%, you found that the consumption went down slightly. But at 10%, the other two segments are able to absorb it because they have that cushion. At 50%, how many of them will absorb remains a question.
Yeah.
One, because it is too steep. Second, because the competitors are selling at lower prices. So will they switch from Indian shrimp to Ecuadorian shrimp or to Vietnam shrimp? That is one question. Two, will shrimps go out of the dining table of most Americans?
If you look at the Indian, the Indian fishermen, and the entire value chain that is associated with this, if you start with the trawlers itself, or the boat going into the ocean. So if you're looking at the boats that are going into the ocean to fish, or a trawler that is going into the ocean, it could cost anywhere up to 4 lakh rupees to actually take a trawler into the ocean. But now you're seeing that prawn prices in India are dropping. Can you walk us through what is the kind of decision the fishermen and other businesses associated with this are talking to you about what are some of the decisions they're having to make as a result of this extremely high levels of tariffs? What is going on across the value chain, from the fishermen to like the different parts of the processes which you'd explained earlier, from the peelers to all the other parts of this whole value chain.
You have to look at the immediate impact, the short term and the long term, or how the system will have to react and readjust to this tariff threat. First, in the short term, you have to continue working, as I said. So what is most important is that you should be continue working. You have to have the credit line from the banks. So this is something which we have been requesting the government to at least to extend the working capital by 30%. So that you can continue doing business, because your whatever you are invested in and the product, either it is lying in the cold storage or it is in transit, and we don't know when the realization will come in.
And to just clarify this, you're saying that that you have requested banks, the government is requesting banks to increase the credit line, which means that the businesses can borrow a little more than they usually were allowed to. And when you say working capital, it's about making payments to their employees, for the raw materials, just running the business, basically.
Working capital is what you need for running the business. So working capital expenses are, as you said, you pay the employees, you pay for the raw materials, you pay for your various other consumables, and the additions normally come from the sale of the product. Now, what you're getting from the sale of the product is being stifled or is getting delayed. So you need the support of the banks to have some more working capital. So this is a policy decision that the government has to take, and we are confident that some policy decision will emerge from the government, because we have been petitioning the various authorities. Second request that we have made is that have a short moratorium on repayment of pre and post packaging credits for exports to US. Now, there is a problem. So you avail the packing credit. Packing credit is normally taken against an export order. So it is taken either before dispatch or after dispatch. So in this situation, till the crisis gets resolved, or there is a clarity on the matter, have a moratorium on repayment of pre and post packaging credit. And third is interest subvention, which was introduced during COVID times, was very effective, but then it was withdrawn last year. So it can be reinstated for those sectors which are affected by the US tariffs, specifically for that. So these are the three suggestions. The idea is that your cash flow is not affected. So you're able to retain your labor. You don't have to lay off people. So you can continue with the business. Now, if you don't, or your access to one market gets controlled, what do? You look for other markets. That's the obvious question that comes in. Which are the other markets that we have? After US, the second largest destination of Indian seafood export was China, about $1.2 billion. Third is EU, $1.1 billion. Fourth is Japan, around 500 million. So this is how it comes in. So we'll have to expand our foothold in these three markets.
And what does that
look around for
involve? What would that involve when you're talking about expanding your foothold?
Yes. So when you already these countries are getting their supplies from some places. So when you are trying to expand, you'll have to order something plus, obviously. Now, China knows very well, EU knows very well, Japan knows very well, Southeast Asian countries know very well that Indian shrimp is good because it has a market in US. US is highly quality conscious.
Correct.
But then you're not getting entry to US market. So what do? You try to bring down the price a bit. So that is again business. It's a normal course of business. Anyone will want to get strike a good bargain and get better profits.
Yes, and
So
to
this is
just clarify what you're saying that of course we will look for new markets, but even there will be these challenges that they will demand that you reduce the price.
Or in other words, you won't get the same value for the produce that you're getting in US.
Right.
You may not get it. So this is one. So when your 2.8 billion export realization from US may shrink when you redistribute to the other markets. This is a point. So that will affect the entire supply chain because it is only based on the returns that you can pay the labor, you can pay for the raw materials. So that is one challenge. So that readjustment may happen. That's in the short and medium term. In the long term, I'm sure that there will be a reset of relations because what is happening is that even though there might be reasons within the country or larger geostrategic reason for US to impose this tariff, but ultimately who pays for it? It's a consumer in US. The consumer in US who was picking up his shrimp off the shelves of Walmart and Costco for X is required to pay X plus 30% or 50% if he wants to enjoy that particular product, then he is a loser. Second, now if the supermarkets don't stock it, thinking that people are not picking it up, you are denying US consumer his choice, which is always his right.
Right.
The success of US is that the consumer there could be offered the best of choice from around the world.
Right.
So one product which had about 35% of the market, which was approved for the quality, for the taste, is suddenly finding a challenge, not for any reasons concerned with the product or with the mode of production, but because of something else. So this is something which the impact will be hit only by November, December, because already people are stocked. So that stocking process goes on because US, you have the Thanksgiving and then the Christmas and New Year. So most of the people would have stocked for that.
So just to revisit what you're saying, you're basically saying that because of all these uncertainties, the buyers in the US had already bought shrimp and they had stocked it. So the increase in price may not be reflective immediately, like in 1 or 2 months, but perhaps later in the year. And when that comes in, the consumer is not going to be happy. It's probably going to be reflected in consumer sentiment. You're obviously going to see inflation because tariffs are not just related to seafood, right? It's related to so many different products. You're definitely possibly going to see disappointment from the consumers. And of course, because they have to pay a higher price and because of the limited choice they will now have, right? And you think that may possibly cause a reset in the relationship between India and the US. In some senses, there is maybe that. So in the longer term, this may actually change, so that's why you're talking about the medium and short term. And okay.
So in the short term, as I said, we need to right now keep our heads over water, ensure that companies continue to function, the business continues, look for other markets and survive during these turbulent times, and consolidate also. Look for new markets. You're 40% in US. Probably you should have it much more evenly distributed. I would specifically mention about the FTA that the government has entered with UK. It opens out a new market. UK may not be as big a market as EU or US, but it's an important market. So 100 billion trade that we have there can be increased to 300 or 400 and once we get the parity in tariff.
Right. Right.
Second, EU, we are having a negotiations which is going on and which is, as we learned, the final stages. If that is also approved, the EU markets will become larger for us. Already we have 1.1 billion trade that is happening. So it can also expand considerably and substantially. So if government's actions in a proactive manner in entering into FTA will also benefit the sector.
Got it.
So this is what I said in the longer term, even as we reset, even as we are looking at the possibility of resetting the Indo-US relationship and the trade policies of the countries, we are also acutely aware of the fact that there needs to be a more even distribution of your export basket to ensure that such hits do not affect us in future.
Right. You're saying so the
having FTA
overdependence in the US will have to reduce.
will
Right.
have to-
Now, if you'd spoken about the women who are, central to the entire processing of this whole seafood sector. You spoke about the short-term impact. You spoke about, how companies are going to find it difficult to manage their working capital and some leeway from the banks. What are you hearing from different people who are part of this value chain of seafood exports? What are the anxieties? Definitely this whole discussion with the banks is going to be very, very important. Uh, Paying at least some amount of living wage to workers who are probably not going to have that much work to do in the short term is going to be important. So what is the example of anxieties you're hearing from different parts of this value chain?
No, anxiety is right now is basically as to make both ends meet in this situation. So as I said, it's right now it's a problem of cash flow, even as you're looking for new markets. So people are on the one hand, they're trying to ensure that processes keep happening, factories continue functioning, even if at a slower pace that is happening. There have not been any layoffs as such. Nobody has closed shop.
So maybe reduction of shifts and things like that, you think?
Yes, yes, that's what is happening. So some reduction shifts, and one thing as far as farming is concerned is that the first crop is over, the second crop will happen next couple of months. So it has come at a time when that gap is there, which is why the prices of farmed shrimp hasn't fallen drastically. It's only because it's right off season. The next crop will come in couple of months. So within this time, if the order books get filled from other sources, then business can continue as usual or as it how it used to be, or at least up to 70 to 80% of that. So that is on this thing. But the anxieties are there at all levels. Now, as was mentioned, the anxieties are not just to the exporters who definitely are at the front end, but anxieties are there at the level of the farms. A person, if the orders are not there, who will farm the shrimp? Why should he farm the shrimp if there are not going to be buyers?
Right.
So that is hatcheries behind them. Why should they have the hatcheries and produce all these shrimplets if nobody is going to buy them and farm them? Similarly, the boat owners, the trawler owners, they go and fish and they go braving a lot of challenges to the sea. And if they bring the product and it doesn't get the price that it warrants, then why should they do it? So these anxieties are there across the supply chain, which is why I said a decision taken by a government sitting far away can impact the livelihoods of millions of people in the country.
You seem to be kind of personally invested in this in a way, right? I mean, I can sense it when you're speaking as well. Because is it because you're getting all these calls from different people across the value chain? Like, what are you hearing from them? What are they talking to you about? Can you give us some examples of people calling you? I'm sure you're getting a lot of calls, right, about this and asking you what can be done, how should we resolve this? What are the stories you can tell us about people?
The stories are similar everywhere. What particularly comes in is because I'm working in the Seafood Exporters Association, my direct exposure is to them on a daily basis. So they need to know what is happening in the banks. When can they get this thing from the banks? Unfortunately, what happens in our country is that there are a lot of agencies who do the rating and studies and all that. So based on that, banks also take a call as to whether a sector is under stress or not. I told you that the seafood exports had doubled from around 30,000 crores to more than 60,000 crores of rupees in the last 10 years, from 2014 to. So it's a sector which has been growing. So everyone is happy. banks are happy, the exporters are happy, down that everyone is happy. Now suddenly, because of a decision taken in USA, sector is facing challenges. But immediately banks started tightening up because there are studies that say that this sector is facing headwinds, which is, in my opinion, just the opposite of what should be done. You find that someone was doing very well. He has run into some problems. Shouldn't you help him out? This is a message that should go to the banks. This is what is not happening.
Yeah, I mean, it is
So
a bit
instead
difficult
of-
even for the banks, right? Because they are facing this issue from a variety of industries, in a sense. So
Yeah,
it
but
is.
I'll give you one example.
Hmm.
I'll give you one example. Normally, during the season of farming or during the fish procurement season, banks at the local level extend the working capital. Managers are empowered to do that. So if your limit is up to, let's say, 100 rupees, they give up to 110 or 120 because you're good customers. You know that if you're giving 120, he will buy more produce and he will do that and bring back 150 or 180 rupees. This has been happening for the last 10 years. Now what is happening is that they haven't stopped it, but the decision making goes to the level of deputy MD.
Right.
So with one deputy MD for most banks in charge of the entire state, it takes time.
Yeah.
And invariably, at the local level, the banks know the customers. The local bank manager knows, yes, he's a good customer. But when it goes to the higher level, it becomes a figure, a name in a sector, which is under so-called stress.
Yeah.
So ultimately, he is not able to procure. When he is not able to procure, who suffers? It is the fisherman who suffers, the fisher, the farmer who suffers. So this is how that is working. So this is where I feel we need to. Of course, bank need to protect their interests, no doubt about it. Our own money is invested in the banks. Banks should not go broke. We are all aware of that. But at the same time, if they don't support the sectors that have traditionally done well, and it is not due to bad business, let me repeat, it is not someone taking loan from the banks and
Deliberately.
having a splash. He's not someone who is starting some new venture which fails. It is an ongoing business which is facing a headwind because of a geopolitical reason.
Right. Now,
It's almost like a force majeure clause.
Yeah.
So in this situation, this is this thing which I think everyone should highlight, that we need to have a more pragmatic approach. I would use the word empathetic approach. It is not just about balancing the income and expenditure. There also have to be concerned that there are human beings involved.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a very difficult position because, like you're saying, you have things that are not in your control, which is coming from overseas. And then there are some things that could be under your control, and there could be support from the government to actually help them tide over this difficulty. Now, as a final question, if we are looking ahead, what do you think is at stake here with respect to India's place in the global seafood market? Like you said, on one hand, we are facing challenges with one of our biggest buyers. On the other hand, when we are looking for newer buyers, there's going to be some amount of bargaining there too. And of course, competition from the same players, Vietnam, Ecuador, if you're trying to sell to China or other countries, Japan. So if you had to pick one step that could change this trajectory, what would you say it is? What would it be?
No, I would only say one thing, that this is a sector which has been doing very well, produces top quality goods. It's not a sector which is exporting to countries which has always been there with us. Now, there are some traditional markets for Indian products. And this is a sector which exports the best of markets, which meets the quality parameters. There are no sustainability related challenges at work here. So this is a sector that needs to be supported right now through these times. If it is supported during these difficult times, like it doubled in the last 10 years, it will double the realization in the next 5 years. It has a potential for doing that. I watched this sector closely for many years. I told you I was in government. I watched this sector when I was in government. Now I'm working with this sector. I can see the innate strength of the sector. Of course, as we go along, there are a lot of improvements and innovations that are required, which they will adapt to. So only thing that is required right now is support for the sector.
Support from the government, you're saying, and the banks.
Yes, support from the government, support from the banks. Business they will do. They will find the business. I have no doubt about it. Even as we speak now, people are there in various parts of the business, various parts of the globe, trying to sell their produce, trying to find new markets, trying to expand their portion new markets. Government has been helping through this FTAs and other measures at the intergovernmental level. We are sure that some more positive steps will come in the form of direction towards bank, and we have an export promotion mission in the offering from the government. So government will take the necessary steps, we know that. But this support is all that this sector
And it needs it
requires.
fast, right? I mean, there can't be delay, right?
And there should be, because this is where the importance of capacity building comes in. Banks, when they train their officers, when they train their manpower, should also understand that there needs to be an element of humaneness and empathy
Yeah.
while tackling these matters.
my-
This is
my-
a lesson that I am taking home.
Yeah. My last question for you is, you've been a medical doctor, you've been with the government, you have even played umpire on a cricketing pitch. Where does this particular argument related to tariffs, how do you weigh it? Do you see that there is a possible solution? Do you think that 1 year down the line we could probably be hopeful about things turning better? You've resolved many disputes across your career, which has gone through various areas. So how would you actually rate this particular problem that the seafood sector is facing, and is it resolvable?
I believe it is resolvable. We are a resilient sector and we'll bounce back with more vigor and vitality. I've seen this happen. You mentioned about cricket. You take the career of all great players. Most of them would have gone under the scalpel once or more than that. Even Tendulkar, he's gone to the scalpel 3 times. Dennis Lilly battled a major spine injury, came back. So it depends upon the fortitude, resilience, and motivation of the player to bounce back. The sector has all three,
Okay.
which is why it is there in the best markets. And I am sure that we will bounce back and we will double it. One more example I'll say. We were imposed sanction by US in 98 after the testing of
The nuclear.
nuclear test in 1988. We bounced back. The next 5 years were probably the best so far as economic growth was there. So all these challenges actually help us to reach deeper into our reserves and come out better. This is from my experience of being a doctor and I've been part of government, and whatever little exposure I had to cricket has taught me.
Great. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Raghavan. I really appreciate this. And look forward to maybe reconnecting with you once again when things are hopefully getting better. But thank you today for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.